movie, which I made, which you'll never see, actually had 6 average Americans that I put an ad out on Craigslist. And in 1 hour, I got 300 people who put their hand up to be in a documentary. I put an ad, anyone wants to juice for 10 days and be in a documentary? And like in 1 hour, we got 300 people, because everyone wants to be famous in America, right? It was like, bang. So we shut it down in 1 hour. And we chose 6 people out of those 300. And that's where Siong, who's in the movie, that's how she ended up connecting with us. And it was just a coincidence that she was from Iowa. What we tried to do was to choose 3 women, 3 men, all different ethnicities, rich and poor, all over the country. And I actually filmed all of those people during the time that I was doing my 60 days. And they sort of tag team 10 days of my 60. That was the original conceit idea that I had when I started to make the movie. And then in May, it was Mother's Day of 2008, and my mum said, Joe, show some of those fat photos to one of your aunties or something like this. So I had to pull out my iPhone. Now, iPhone hadn't released in Australia at this stage. It's version 1 iPhone we're talking about. So that was my US phone, and because I'm in Australia, I don't have the phone on. So I went to my desk, pulled out my American phone, turned it on to get the photos where they were living, and this voicemail popped up. I thought, that's a bit strange, like, I haven't been in America for like 2 or 3 months, but someone's rung me on that number. And because it was Mother's Day and we were at lunch, I didn't do anything about that. I just showed the fat photos, like, you know, like I did, well, my mum wanted me to do it, so I did it. And then after they left for lunch, I went to turn the phone off and I realised there was this voice message. And that was the message from Phil. And he'd left it 3 days earlier in terms of the time frame. So it was just as well, because if Mum hadn't have said, get that, you know, I could have been another month before I turned that phone on. So it was quite incredible that that was the case. And so I immediately grabbed my camera, went out on the balcony of my apartment, and you saw that reaction, like that was instantaneous as soon as I heard the voicemail. Then I had this panic attack. How am I going to get the voicemail onto the movie? Like, it's in a phone. So I did like 12 recordings, and I mean, you know, because if you lose that. And so that moment, I knew that the whole movie was taking a big change. And I rang up the producer in New York and I said, we've got to get the camera crew out again. Now, anyone in the movie business would understand, I was on time, on budget, everything was done. We were in the final edit of a movie. We are like ready to just close it out. I'm going back to my normal life. We're going to have a movie about juicing that might be sold in a few yogi shops. It might, some health food shops might, you know, have it on the bed. It really, for me, it was about me getting well. It wasn't about making this movie that would, you know, it was like, the camera was my way of making me do it, if that makes sense. Like, I decided to do this so that I would follow through, because all the times before, everything else I tried, I'd always given up. So when I got this message from Phil, and having driven across your great country and spoken to over 350 Americans and said to them, if you give me a call, I'll give you a hand, he's the only guy who called. Wow. Now, I gave my number, I gave my email, I gave Joel Furman's book that I had, that I bought when I went and saw him in his rooms. I had about 100 of those. I cleaned him out of those, so I gave those out to everybody that I could see that wanted help. And he rang, so I couldn't turn that down. I had to do it. And I thought maybe in the credits we can have, you know, that truck driver, and he's doing his 10 days. And to be honest, when I got to Iowa, I really didn't think Phil was going to be allowed to do the 10 days, which is why when you see us go to the supermarket, we buy a lot of stuff that's actually not to juice. We bought a lot of stuff to eat, a lot of nuts and beans. We bought a lot of plant-based food for him to eat. We didn't think he'd be allowed. But Amy Badberg, she gave the green light. And of course, I'm thinking 10 days, we can edit that into the credits. Well, of course, day 10 comes, I've got 2 cameramen, a sound guy, a producer, Phil, all living by the lake, right, in the sunshine, 5 bedrooms, 2 hire cars, per diems, you've got to pay these people. And of course, my accountant's wringing my neck telling me I'm going crazy. And I think it's only 10 days, don't worry, it's only 10 days. So of course, day 10 comes along and Phil goes, you know, Joe, I'm thinking about going longer. And I'm like, really, Phil? Really? Put Robert on, who's the producer. I said, have you blokes put him up to this? Have you made him, because, you know, you're on my dime there. He said, no, Joe, this is because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to do the Biggest Loser. I didn't want to be the trainer. I wanted him to do it on his own. And the guys who I had working for me were all Michael Moore's team from his movies. So they are strict documentary guys who don't cross the line at anything. There's no second takes in our movie, for example. Like when I go to see Phil on the porch, you know, when I walk up with a T-shirt, that scene, when I first come to see him in Iowa, there's a bloke next door mowing the lawn. We have to wait an hour and a half until he stopped mowing before I could drive around the corner. Because with this background sound of a mower, you can't edit and cut. And there's no like, oh Phil, that didn't work, let's do that again, go behind the door. You can't do it because you can tell we're not actors. It has to be real, otherwise you, the audience, can pick it up. So they didn't cross the line. They said, no, Phil wants to keep going. And I said, all right, well, you blokes all pack up and go back to New York, leave one person there with Phil, because you're killing me, and we'll see how we go. And I've got to be honest, on day 60, Phil wanted to go 100 days. And I had to sort of say, mate, I mean, you know, I've pushed the production back, you know, we've got to wrap it up. And then he comes back and starts the plant-based diet and starts the exercise, and I couldn't stop the film until he got into the T-shirt. So it was another 2 years. Another 2 years, right? So this was an extraordinary journey for me, of which now has taken me to this blessed position where I'm now able to come and be in a position to talk to you, share this movie. We've had about 2 million people now watch the movie. There's thousands of people. If I can just, maybe if anybody, we'll just do a little thing we like to do. And if you're already standing up, put your hand up. And if you're not, stand up if you've done a reboot. Just stand up if you've done a reboot. Okay, now sit down if you just did 10 days. If you've done longer than 10 days, stay standing. Now keep your hand up if you've done longer than 10 days. If you've done longer than 20 days, keep standing. So we've got a few people. Any hands up over there? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can't see behind there, but 7, 8, and then 9. And then longer than 40 days? Fantastic. And then these guys are, anyone longer than 60, or you guys are all at the 60? Longer than 60? Fantastic. So that's like a dozen people. And we'll go Cam, this is Cam from Australia, he's going to do 90 days, is that right, or 100?
Probably 90.
90. Fantastic, Cam. So, and this is an incredible thing that what happens now is that everyone you saw standing up, everyone, whether you did 5 days, 10, 20, 30, they are all leaders and they are all sharing this on because people around them see them and they see the changes and they go, wow, what are you doing? And this is not a diet. I don't call this a diet. We don't call it the reboot diet. It's a reboot. It's a time to take a chance to have a break, your body to give it a rest. It's a time that I believe that we are built not to eat for periods of time. There are 3 things you've got to put in your human body to stay alive. And by the way, everybody here tonight's doing a fantastic job of what their body is designed to do, which is to stay alive. Because at the end of the day, that's all it's doing. Everything about your body is trying to keep you alive. And the 3 things you've got to put in it to stay alive is air, water, and food. Now we all know, you take away air from us for 5-10 minutes, it's game over. Just think about that. 5-10 minutes without air and you die. Water, depending on the conditions, 5 to 10 days, you die. Food, very different story. You can go, depending on your condition, depending on how much energy you're carrying on you, you can go well over 30, 40, 50, 60, 90, even beyond 120 days, depending on what you're carrying just on water alone. So let's think about that. We have been evolving on this earth for 4 million years. And during that time, we've evolved not to store up oxygen for more than 10 minutes because air is abundant, but we've evolved to store up energy in our fat and in our muscle. And all I did was take the logic of saying, why am I carrying all this around? Like I've got all this energy, and you saw it in the movie, those, you know, hamburgers or pizzas that I'd had like a year or 2 years ago was still on me, that energy that I'd stored up. So to me now, in the last 4 years since I've been doing this, I don't see any fat people anymore. I don't see fat people. I haven't seen a fat person in 4.5 years. What I see is a lot of people carrying a lot of energy around, and my question is, when are you going to use it up? When are you going to take that energy and actually use it? Just think about those little energy cells. Like, They're sitting there waiting to be used, and all of a sudden a cheeseburger comes in. What about us? Why can't we be used? So I'd like to